The rain battered the cracked pavement, each drop a cold reminder of the night Emma Carter, at 14, was shoved out her front door with nothing but a backpack and her mother's screams echoing in her ears. "You're not my daughter," her mother had shouted, the words sin hurled like a stone. Now, 10 years later, Emma stood on that same street in Willow Creek, Tennessee, clutching a set of keys that felt heavier than the world she'd carried since. The house loomed ahead, its white paint peeling like old skin, the porch sagging under years of neglect. Emma, now 24, had grown into a woman of quiet strength, her chestnut hair tucked behind her ears, her leather jacket shielding her from the drizzle. She wasn't alone. Beside her stood Lily Harper, 25, her partner, whose blonde waves danced in the breeze, her hand a warm anchor in Emma's trembling grip. They'd driven 800 miles to face this place, Emma's childhood home, the site of her exile, and now, impossibly, hers again. 10 years ago, Emma's world shattered when her mother, Deborah, found her diary, its pages spilling with confessions of her love for a girl named Sarah from school. The revelation had torn through the Carter household like a wildfire. Deborah, a devout woman whose faith was her armor, saw Emma's feelings as a betrayal of God and family. By nightfall, Emma was homeless, her father silent, her older brother Ethan too young to intervene. She'd survived on the streets of Nashville, scraping by in shelters, working odd jobs, and burying her pain under layers of resilience. Now, Emma's boots crunched on the gravel path as she approached the house. The keys in her hand were more than metal, they were a deed, a victory, a rewriting of her story. She'd bought the house at auction, a decision born of defiance and a need to reclaim what was stolen. Lily squeezed her hand, her green eyes steady. "You don't have to do this alone," she whispered. Emma nodded, but her heart raced. This wasn't just about a house. It was about facing the ghosts of rejection, the family she'd lost, and the girl she'd been. The door creaked open, revealing a musty living room frozen in time. The same floral couch sat against the wall, faded but defiant. Emma's breath caught as memories flooded back, her mother's prayers, her father's quiet disappointment, the sound of her own sobs as she was pushed out. Lily stepped closer, her presence a shield. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. Emma nodded, though her chest ached. She wasn't okay, not yet, but she was here, and that was enough for now. Willow Creek hadn't changed much. The town was a patchwork of small shops, churches, and gossip that spread faster than the summer heat. Emma had heard whispers of her family's decline since she'd left. Her father's death 5 years ago, her mother's retreat into isolation, Ethan's move to Atlanta. The house had fallen into foreclosure, a casualty of unpaid bills and broken dreams. When Emma saw it listed online, something snapped inside her. She'd spent years building a life in Chicago bartending, then managing a cafe, saving every penny with Lily by her side. Buying the house was a reckless choice, but it felt like destiny. As they stepped further inside, the air grew heavy with dust and memory. Emma traced a finger along the mantel, where a photo of her at 10 still sat, her smile wide and unscarred. She'd been happy once, before her truth became a weapon. Lily, sensing the weight, slipped an arm around her waist. "This place doesn't own you anymore," she said. Emma leaned into her, grateful for the woman who'd become her home when no one else would. Their love had bloomed in Chicago, in a cramped apartment above a noisy bar. Lily, an artist with a laugh like sunlight, had met Emma at the cafe where she worked. One spilled coffee led to a conversation, then a date, then a life together. Lily's optimism balanced Emma's guarded heart, and together they'd built something unbreakable. But returning to Willow Creek tested that strength. Emma hadn't told her family she was back, hadn't spoken to them in a decade. The thought of seeing Deborah again twisted her stomach. Outside, the rain slowed, and Emma noticed a figure across the street, a neighbor, Mrs. Callahan, peering from her porch. The woman had been kind once, slipping Emma cookies when her mother wasn't looking. Now her stare was curious, maybe judgmental. Emma turned away, focusing on the house. "We should check the upstairs," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Lily nodded, and they climbed the creaking stairs, each step a journey into the past. The second floor was a maze of memories. Emma's old bedroom was untouched, her posters still pinned to the walls, bands she'd loved, a life she'd lost. She opened the closet, half expecting to find her old backpack, but it was empty. The ache in her chest grew sharper. I used to hide here, she told Lily, her voice barely above a whisper. When Mom would yell about my grades or my clothes, I'd sit in the dark and dream of being someone else. Lily knelt beside her, her hand on Emma's knee. You don't have to be anyone else now, she said. You're enough. The words hit like a wave and Emma's eyes stung. She'd spent so long proving she was an auto herself to the world. Buying this house was part of that proof, but standing here she felt 14 again, small and unwanted. As they explored, Emma found a box of old letters under her bed, notes from Sarah, the girl who'd unknowingly sparked her exile. The handwriting was faded but the words still burned. I like you too, but we can't tell anyone. Sarah had moved away after that summer, and Emma never saw her again. She handed the letters to Lily, who read them in silence, her expression softening. She was your first love, Lily said, not a question but a truth. Emma nodded, the weight of that love still heavy. Downstairs, the sound of a car pulling up snapped them back to the present. Emma peered through the window and froze. It was Ethan's truck, unmistakable even after all these years. Her brother, now 22, had grown into a man, his face shadowed by a baseball cap. He stepped out, hesitating at the gate. Emma's heart pounded. She hadn't planned to face him today, hadn't prepared for the flood of anger and longing his presence stirred. Emma! Lily's voice was gentle, grounding. You want me to handle it? Emma shook her head, gripping the keys tighter. This was her moment, her reclamation. She opened the door and stepped onto the porch, the drizzle cool against her skin. Ethan looked up, his eyes widening. For a moment they were kids again, sharing secrets under the oak tree out back. Then the weight of 10 years settled between them. Ethan, she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside. He took a step closer, his expression unreadable. I heard someone bought the house, he said, his voice low. Didn't know it was you. Emma held his gaze, the keys glinting in her hand. It's mine now, she said, and the words felt like a vow. Ethan stood frozen, his boots rooted to the wet gravel, as if the sight of Emma on the porch was a ghost he hadn't expected to face. The air between them crackled with unspoken history, years of silence, guilt, and the weight of a family fractured by fear. Emma's grip on Lily's hand tightened, her heart a battlefield of hope and dread. You're back, Ethan said finally, his voice rough like he'd been chewing on the words for years. He looked older than 22, his face etched with lines that spoke of hard choices. Emma nodded, unsure if she wanted to hug him or scream. I'm not just back, she said, lifting the keys slightly. I own this place now. The statement hung in the air, bold and unyielding, a challenge to the past that had cast her out. Ethan's eyes flicked to Lily, then back to Emma, a question forming but unspoken. Lily stepped forward, her presence calm but protective. I'm Lily, she said, her voice warm yet firm, offering her hand. Ethan hesitated, then shook it, his gaze softening just a fraction. Nice to meet you, he mumbled, but his attention stayed on Emma, searching for the sister he'd lost. The drizzle had stopped, leaving the air heavy with the scent of wet earth. Emma gestured toward the house. Want to come in? She asked, though the invitation felt like stepping onto a tightrope. Ethan nodded, following them inside. The living room felt smaller with him in it, his broad shoulders filling the space where their childhood had unraveled. He glanced at the faded couch, the mantel, the photo of young Emma. Looks the same, he said, almost to himself. It's not, Emma replied, her voice sharper than intended. Nothing's the same. Ethan flinched, and for a moment she saw the boy who'd cried when she was kicked out, too young to stop it but old enough to feel the shame. I tried to find you, he said quietly. After you left. Mom wouldn't talk about it, and Dad. He just drank more. The words hit Emma like a punch, stirring memories of her father's silence, his inability to stand up to Deborah's wrath. Lily sat on the arm of the couch, giving Emma space but staying close, her presence a quiet reminder of strength. Emma took a breath, steadying herself. Why are you here, Ethan? She asked. He rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture so familiar it hurt. I heard the house was sold. Thought I'd check it out. Didn't expect. He trailed off, his eyes meeting hers. I didn't expect you. The conversation stumbled, each word a step through a minefield. Ethan explained he'd moved to Atlanta after high school, working construction, trying to escape the shadow of their family's collapse. He hadn't spoken to their mother in years, not since their father's death. "She's still in town," he said, his voice heavy. "Living in a trailer park now. She's different, quieter." Emma's stomach twisted at the mention of Deborah. She wasn't ready to face her, not yet. As they talked, Lily suggested coffee, a small act of normalcy in the charged atmosphere. She slipped into the kitchen, leaving Emma and Ethan alone. The silence was thick, but Emma broke it. "I survived," she said, her voice low but fierce. "On the streets, in shelters, working jobs that barely paid. I made a life, Ethan. Without this place. Without any of you." Her words weren't meant to wound, but they did. Ethan's jaw tightened and he looked away. "I'm sorry," he said finally, the words raw. "I was just a kid, Em. I didn't know how to help." Emma wanted to believe him, wanted to bridge the gap, but the hurt was a chasm. Still, his presence here, his attempt to reach out, was something. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Lily returned with mismatched mugs, her smile a quiet bomb. "Found some instant coffee in the cupboard," she said. "It's terrible, but it's hot." They sat, the three of them, sipping bitter coffee in a house that held too many ghosts. Ethan asked about Emma's life in Chicago, and she told him pieces: her job, her friends, Lily. She didn't hide their relationship, and to her surprise, Ethan didn't flinch. "You seem happy," he said, and there was a sincerity that caught her off guard. "I am," she replied, glancing at Lily, whose eyes shone with pride. As evening fell, Ethan stood to leave, promising to come back tomorrow. "I want to fix this," he said, gesturing vaguely at the space between them. Emma didn't know if he meant the house or their relationship, but she nodded. After he left, she and Lily stood on the porch watching his truck disappear. "You did good," Lily said, kissing Emma's temple. "That was brave." Emma leaned into her, the weight of the day settling into her bones. They spent the night in sleeping bags on the living room floor, the house too bare for furniture. Emma lay awake, Lily's steady breathing beside her, thinking about Ethan's words, her mother's absence, and the keys that had brought her here. This house was hers now, but it wasn't home, not yet. It was a battleground, a place to rewrite her story. And she wasn't fighting alone. The next morning they began cleaning, scrubbing years of neglect from the floors and walls. Lily painted over the faded wallpaper, her artist's eye turning the space into something new. Emma tackled the yard, pulling weeds and imagining a garden where she'd once played. Neighbors watched from afar, their curiosity a mix of suspicion and intrigue. Mrs. Callahan brought over a casserole, her smile tentative but kind. "Heard you were back," she said. "This town could use some of your spirit." Emma thanked her, surprised by the warmth. But the peace was short-lived. That afternoon, a knock at the door startled them. Emma opened it to find a woman from the local church, her face tight with disapproval. "This house belongs to the Carters," she said, her voice clipped. "You can't just take it." Emma's blood ran hot. "I bought it," she said, holding up the deed. "It's mine." The woman scoffed, muttering about sin and shame, and Emma felt the old wounds reopen. Lily stepped beside her, her voice calm but steel-edged. "This is our home now. You're welcome to leave." The woman retreated, but her words lingered, a reminder of the town's lingering judgment. Emma closed the door, her hands shaking. Lily pulled her into a hug, whispering, "They don't get to define you." But the encounter shook Emma more than she admitted. Willow Creek wasn't Chicago, where she and Lily could walk hand in hand without stairs. Here every step felt like a fight. Still, she wouldn't run. Not again. The days in Willow Creek blurred into a rhythm of restoration and reckoning. Emma and Lily worked tirelessly on the house, sanding floors, patching walls, and painting over the past with colors that felt like hope. But the town's whispers followed them, a constant hum of judgment that tested Emma's resolve. She'd catch glimpses of familiar faces, old classmates, churchgoers, neighbors who stared too long or turned away too quickly. Each glance was a reminder of the girl she'd been, the one who'd fled in shame. Lily was her anchor, her laughter filling the house as they danced to music from a battered radio, paint smudges on their faces. One evening, as they sat on the porch sharing a beer, Lily traced circles on Emma's hand. "This place is starting to feel like ours," she said, her eyes reflecting the stars. Emma smiled, but her heart was heavy. The house was changing, but the ghosts of her past lingered, and the thought of facing her mother loomed like a storm on the horizon. Ethan visited daily, bringing tools and a quiet willingness to help. He was different from the boy Emma remembered, less timid, more grounded, but still carrying the weight of their shared history. They worked side by side, ripping out old carpet, their conversations tentative but growing. One afternoon, as they pried up floorboards, Ethan paused, wiping sweat from his brow. "I should have done more back then," he said, his voice low. "I was scared, Em. Of Mom, of everything." Emma met his gaze, seeing the guilt he'd carried. "We were kids," she said finally. "You didn't know how to fight her." The admission softened something between them, a crack in the wall that had stood for a decade. Ethan told her about his life in Atlanta, his job, his girlfriend, his attempts to move forward. "I kept your old guitar," he said, surprising her. "It's in my truck. Thought you might want it." Emma's throat tightened. She'd loved that guitar, a gift from her father before everything fell apart. The gesture felt like a bridge, small but real. But not everyone in Willow Creek was ready to build bridges. The churchwoman's visit had stirred the town's undercurrent of disapproval, and soon small acts of hostility began. A broken window one night, a crude word scrawled on the mailbox the next. Emma felt the old fear creep in, the same fear that had chased her out at 14. Lily, ever defiant, painted over the graffiti with bold colors, turning the mailbox into a work of art. "Let them try to scare us," she said, her eyes flashing. "This is our home." Still, the tension wore on Emma. She began to question why she'd come back, why she'd thought owning this house could rewrite her pain. Late one night, as they lay in their sleeping bags, she whispered her doubts to Lily. "What if this was a mistake? What if I can't face her?" Lily turned to her, her face soft in the moonlight. "You're not here to prove anything to them, Em. You're here for you. For the girl who deserved better." The words steadied her, but the fear remained. The turning point came unexpectedly. Ethan arrived one morning with news. Their mother wanted to see her. Deborah had heard Emma was back, had seen the changes to the house from afar. "She's different now," Ethan said, his voice cautious. "She's been going to a new church, one that's less rigid. She asked about you." Emma's heart raced, a mix of anger and longing. She hadn't planned to face Deborah so soon, hadn't prepared for the flood of emotions the thought of her mother stirred. Lily sat beside her, her hand a quiet reassurance. "You don't have to do this," she said. "But if you want to, I'm right here." Emma nodded, her mind a storm. She agreed to meet Deborah at a neutral Placia diner on the edge of town. The decision felt like stepping into a ring, knowing she might not come out whole. The diner was a relic of Willow Creek's past, its red vinyl booths and jukebox unchanged since Emma's childhood. She and Lily arrived early, sitting in a corner booth, the keys to the house heavy in Emma's pocket. When Deborah walked in, Emma's breath caught. Her mother was smaller than she remembered, her hair graying, her face lined with years of grief. She wore a simple dress, her hands clasped tightly as she approached. "Emma," Deborah said, her voice trembling. Emma stood, her body tense, Lily's hand brushing hers for strength. "Mom," she replied, the word foreign on her tongue. They sat, the air thick with unspoken words. Deborah's eyes flicked to Lily, then back to Emma, and for a moment Emma braced for judgment. But Deborah's expression was different, soft, almost broken. "I didn't know if you'd come," Deborah said, her hands twisting a napkin. I've thought about you every day." The words hit Emma like a wave, stirring anger and sorrow in equal measure. "You threw me out," she said, her voice steady but sharp. "I was 14. I had nowhere to go." Deborah's eyes filled with tears and she nodded. "I know. I was wrong. I was so wrong." The admission was a crack in the armor Emma had built. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but Deborah's vulnerability disarmed her. They talked, haltingly at first, about the years apart, about the pain they'd both carried. Deborah spoke of her own journey, her slow unraveling of the beliefs that had driven her to reject her daughter. "I thought I was saving you," she said, her voice breaking. "But I lost you instead." Emma listened, her heart torn between forgiveness and the weight of her scars. Lily's presence beside her was a lifeline, her quiet strength a reminder that Emma wasn't alone. As the conversation ended, Deborah reached for Emma's hand, a tentative gesture. Emma didn't pull away, but she didn't reciprocate either. "I need time," she said finally. Deborah nodded, tears falling. "I'll wait," she said. "As long as it takes." The diner meeting left Emma reeling, her emotions a tangled knot of anger, hope and grief. She and Lily drove back to the house in silence, the hum of the car a backdrop to Emma's racing thoughts. The keys in her pocket felt heavier now, not just a symbol of ownership but a tether to a past she wasn't sure she could reclaim. Lily reached for her hand, her touch a quiet promise. "You were incredible back there," she said. "You faced her. That's huge." Emma managed a small smile, but the weight of her mother's words, "I was wrong," echoed in her mind. Back at the house, they threw themselves into work, as if painting walls could mend the cracks in Emma's heart. The house was transforming, its once dreary rooms now bright with color and light. Lily hung her artwork on the walls, vibrant paintings that turned the space into a home. Emma found her old guitar in the corner where Ethan had left it, its strings dusty but intact. She strummed a chord, the sound pulling her back to simpler days, before love became a crime in her mother's eyes. Ethan came by later, his presence a steadying force. He didn't ask about the meeting with Deborah, but his quiet support spoke volumes. They worked together on the porch, replacing rotted boards, their rhythm easy despite the years apart. "You thinking about staying?" he asked, hammering a nail. Emma paused, the question catching her off guard. She'd bought the house to prove a point, to reclaim her past, but living here? That was a different question. "I don't know," she admitted. "Chicago's home now. But this place, it's part of me." The town's hostility didn't let up. A group of teenagers egged the house one night, their laughter echoing as they ran. Emma cleaned the mess, her jaw tight, while Lily cursed under her breath, promising to paint something so beautiful it would silence the haters. But the incidents were wearing Emma down, reminding her of the rejection that had defined her youth. She began to wonder if Willow Creek would ever accept her, or if she was fighting a losing battle. Then came a small victory. Mrs. Callahan, the neighbor, invited them to a community barbecue, a gesture that felt like a crack in the town's armor. Emma hesitated, but Lily's enthusiasm won her over. "Let's show them who we are," Lily said, her eyes bright. At the barbecue, held in a park lined with oak trees, Emma and Lily arrived hand in hand, their presence a quiet defiance. Some stared, others whispered, but a few Mrs. Callahan, a young couple, a former teacher, greeted them warmly. It was an acceptance, not fully, but it was a start. As the weeks passed, Emma wrestled with her mother's apology. She and Deborah met again, this time at a coffee shop, the conversation less raw but still heavy. Deborah spoke of her regrets, her slow journey toward understanding, her new church that preached love over judgment. Emma listened, her guard still up, but she saw something new in her moth-era fragility, a genuine desire to make amends. "I don't expect forgiveness," Deborah said, "but I want to try. For you. For Ethan." Emma didn't have an answer, not yet, but the words stayed with her. One evening, as they sat on the newly finished porch, Lily proposed an idea. "What if we turned this place into something more?" she said, her voice alive with possibility. "A community space, a safe haven for kids like you were. Kids who need a home." The idea struck Emma like lightning. She'd bought the house to reclaim her past, but maybe its purpose was bigger, a way to give others the safety she'd been denied. They began planning, sketching ideas for a youth center where queer kids, homeless kids, anyone lost could find refuge. Ethan was on board, offering to help with construction. Even Mrs. Callahan pledged support, promising to rally the neighborhood. The vision gave Emma purpose, a way to turn her pain into something meaningful. But it also meant staying in Willow Creek, at least for a while, a decision that scared her as much as it excited her. The challenges didn't vanish. The church group protested, circulating a petition to protect the town from the outsiders in the Carter house. Emma felt the old fear rise, but Lily's fierce optimism kept her grounded. "They're loud because they're scared," Lily said. "We're louder because we're right." Together they faced the town council, presenting their plan for the youth center. Emma spoke, her voice steady, about her own story. Kicked out at 14, Surviving, thriving, returning. The room was silent, some faces hard, others softening. The council didn't approve the plan that day, but they didn't reject it either. It was a small victory, but it felt like progress. As summer turned to fall, the house became a symbol of resilience. Emma and Lily hosted a small open house, inviting neighbors to see the changes. A few came curious and left with smiles. Ethan brought his girlfriend, who hugged Emma tightly, whispering, "You're braver than I could ever be." The moment was a balm, a reminder that family could be rebuilt, piece by piece. But the biggest test was still ahead. Deborah asked to visit the house to see what Emma had done. The request sent Emma spiraling, the memories of that rainy night 10 years ago flooding back. Lily held her as she cried, promising to stand by her no matter what. "You decide what she gets to see," Lily said. "This is your home now." Emma nodded, knowing the choice was hers, but the weight of it was crushing. The morning Deborah was set to visit, Emma woke with a knot in her chest, the air in the house thick with anticipation. She and Lily had spent the night preparing, hanging the last of Lily's paintings, sweeping the floors until they shone. The house was no longer the prison of Emma's childhood, it was a canvas of their love, their resilience, their future. But the thought of her mother crossing that threshold stirred a storm of emotions Emma wasn't sure she could weather. When the doorbell rang, Emma froze, her hand gripping the keys that had started this journey. Lily squeezed her shoulder, her eyes steady. "You've got this," she said. Emma nodded, taking a deep breath, and opened the door. Deborah stood there, smaller than ever, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes nervous but warm. "Emma," she said softly, as if testing the word. "Thank you for letting me come." They sat in the living room, the same room where Deborah had once condemned her daughter. The silence was heavy, but Emma broke it, her voice steady. "This is my home now," she said, gesturing to the bright walls, the art, the life she and Lily had built. "I wanted you to see it." Deborah's eyes roamed the space, lingering on a photo of Emma and Lily laughing at a Chicago street fair, framed on the mantel. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice catching. "You've made it yours." The conversation was slow, careful, like navigating a fragile bridge. Deborah spoke of her regrets, her years of reflection, the slow unraveling of her rigid beliefs. "I was afraid," she admitted. "Afraid of what I didn't understand. I thought I was protecting you, but I hurt you instead." Emma listened, her heart torn between the pain of the past and the possibility of something new. She told her mother about her life, her struggles, her triumphs, her love for Lily. She didn't hide, didn't soften her truth. Deborah reached for her hand, and this time Emma let her. The touch was tentative, a small step toward healing. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Deborah said, tears in her eyes. "But I want to be part of your life if you'll let me." Emma didn't have an answer, not fully, but she nodded. "We'll see," she said, the words a promise to herself as much as to her mother. After Deborah left, Emma and Lily stood on the porch, watching the sun set over Willow Creek. The town wasn't perfect, there were still whispers, still glares, but it was changing slowly because of them. The youth center plan was gaining traction, with more neighbors signing on, inspired by Emma's story. Ethan was a constant presence, his bond with Emma growing stronger each day. Even Mrs. Callahan had started a book club, inviting them to join, a small gesture that felt like a victory. One evening, as they sat under the oak tree in the backyard, Emma strummed her old guitar, the notes soft and tentative. Lily leaned against her, humming along, her voice a melody of love. "What do you want this place to be?" Lily asked, her eyes on the stars. Emma thought for a moment, the keys in her pocket a quiet reminder of her power. "A home," she said finally. "Not just for us, but for anyone who needs one." They opened the youth center that fall, a small ceremony marking the occasion. Kids came, some queer, some homeless, some just lost, finding safety in the house that had once rejected Emma. She and Lily ran workshops, cooked meals, listened to stories of pain and hope. Ethan helped build a garden, where kids planted flowers and vegetables, a symbol of growth. Deborah visited sometimes, quietly helping, her presence a work in progress. The town didn't fully embrace them, but the hostility softened. The church group's protests faded, replaced by a grudging acceptance. Emma and Lily walked hand in hand through Willow Creek, their love a quiet rebellion. They were building something bigger than themselves, a legacy of resilience and love. 10 years after being kicked out, Emma stood in her home, the keys in her hand a symbol of her triumph. She wasn't the scared girl anymore, nor the angry survivor. She was Emma Carter, loved whole and home. As she looked at Lily, their fingers intertwined, she knew this was the ending she'd fought for, not just a house, but a life reclaimed, a family rebuilt, a future wide open. The stars above Willow Creek shone brighter that night, as if celebrating with them. Emma strummed her guitar, Lily's voice joining hers, and the music carried their story into the night, a story of pain, love, and the courage to return. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.